Assalamualaikum. Very good afternoon to everybody. I hope that thanks first of all for joining our webinar, and I hope that wherever you're dialing in from, you are safe and well, inshallah, from and at home or even from the office, following all the SOPs and keeping safe and well. Yang Berbahagia Datuk Sri Norazman Ayob, Deputy Secretary General of Industry for Ministry of International Trade and Industry Malaysia, Cik Muhammad Azmi Zulkifli, Chief Executive Officer of InvestKL, Mr. Gilles Waeldin, President CCI France Malaysia, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you for this special webinar from InvestKL and CCI France Malaysia with our honorable guest speaker, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Sri Norazman Ayob, in his capacity of Deputy Secretary General in charge of industry at MITI. First of all, thank you very much, Datuk Sri, for taking time off of your busy schedule. I was just mentioning just now, you're busy and then you've been in media, updating media and our rakyat and so on during this pandemic. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us for this 1 hour dialogue. We know that you have to leave at 4 p.m. Thanks for joining this session with the French business community in Malaysia. Thanks also to our partner today, Cik Muhammad Azmi Zulkifli, CEO of InvestKL, an organization that I happen to know quite well about. Thanks for joining us also for this event and in a way co-hosting it with us as well. Malaysia and France have very strong and long-standing business ties dating back much well before Merdeka actually. And the logos, I assume that you can see there is a chart which we'll put up in a moment. You will see that the logos appearing on the slide are testimonials of the presence in Malaysia of French companies, most of which are on the CAC 40, where the largest companies are listed. Trade between our two countries is steady. Here you go. This is the slide. So you can see the logos, the presence of many large French companies, as well as some Malaysian companies that are members of our chambers. Trade between our two countries is steady and consistent with some of the main sectors of collaboration, aerospace, aeronautics, infrastructure, halal, just to name a few, but there are many more. Employment generated, Datuk Sri, just for your information, directly and indirectly by French companies in Malaysia, stands currently at about 30,000. Meanwhile, the conducive business climate, good infrastructure and support of the Malaysian authorities have allowed many French companies to use Malaysia as a regional hub. And you'll also note that a third of over 500 French companies present in Malaysia are actually SMEs and or entrepreneurs with no direct link to France that have chosen Malaysia as the right place to start their activities. So it's not just the large companies, but also the entrepreneurs as well. In this context, and given the current challenging local and international economic situation, we're glad to be here with you to exchange and get your views on the future of Malaysia and what our Malaysian government is planning for the further long-term development of our country. I'm sure you will talk about the latest development of RCEP, and I'm sure that many of our members will also ask you about the EU FTA later on. As a starting point of our dialogue session, we hope that you'll be able to deliver your message to our members. However, right before, I'd like to invite Encik Muhammad Azmi Zulkifli, CEO of InvestKL, to say a few words. So over to you, Azmi.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. Yang Berbahagia Datuk Sri Norazman Ayob, Deputy Secretary General, Ministry of Industry and International Trade, Malaysia. Datuk Zainal Amanshah, Chairman CCIFM. Mr. Gilles Waeldin, the President of CCIFM. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps not too late to say Happy New Year 2021 And as we are meeting today under the topic of New Decade for Malaysia's Growth and Economic Dimensions, 2021 started with strong optimism, with us looking at the horizon in terms of the vaccines that's promising and that's coming, and it has been deployed in other countries as we see in the current situation. Malaysia continues to drive for investments, and I'm sure Dato Sri Norazman will be covering a lot of those topics as we focus on high value, high tech, and high impact investments to be in this country. It is about creating the right type of jobs in Malaysia to also complement the capacity and the educated labor workforce here in Malaysia. I applaud CCIFM for initiating this webinar. It simply also puts the French companies in the forefront as well as leading in the industry to be looking at what can be done more, what can be done better, and even to also capitalize on other new initiatives that are being launched in the current and immediate term. Same time, I would like to also thank the teams from InvestKL and CCIFM for putting this together, and we hope for a good discussion and a good sharing. We are honored to have Dato Sri Norazman today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azmi, for your remarks. So Yang Bahagia Dato Sri would like to invite you to deliver your keynote address to the French business community. So over to you, Dato Sri.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dato Zainal, Azmi and Gilles, of course. First and foremost, I would like to express our appreciation on behalf of the Ministry of International Trade and Industry to CCI France for inviting the ministry to share with everyone in this webinar the developments in Malaysia in relation to trade, investment, as well as industrial development, as well as to share what would be the focus as far as the Ministry of International Trade and Industry is concerned for this year and the coming years. I would like to share with you some of these things now on the screen. Next, please. Now, first and foremost, I would just like to inform of Malaysia's trade performance in terms of a total trade. Next. Well, as far as the first 11 months of last year, we have yet to actually compute the total trade figures for the whole of last year. So what I can give here is until November last year. Our trade has actually reached, our total trade has actually reached about $381 billion US. Now, owing to the global developments, particularly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that has impacted most of the economies around the world, including Malaysia, we have done, I would say, reasonably well, yeah, relative to our regional peers, despite the challenges that we faced. Notwithstanding that, of course, we acknowledge that in terms of a total trade, it has declined marginally by about 4.6%, where imports declined by 7%, and as far as our exports are concerned, it also declined marginally by about 2.6%. Nevertheless, despite the challenge, our manufacturing sector has performed reasonably well. In fact, I can say that as far as Malaysia's trade performance for the past 11 months of last year, it was supported significantly by the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector basically recorded a marginal decline of about 0.3% as far as the contribution of that sector to Malaysia's total trade. Next. Now, as far as what are those major export and import products in relation to Malaysia's total trade, as you can see, of course, the topmost will be the electronic sector, which by itself account for approximately 40% of Malaysia's manufactured exports. So in terms of Malaysia's total exports, about 84% of it is from manufactured goods. And out of that 84%, about 40% comes from the electrical and electronic sector. And of course, as far as our other four major export products, it will be the petroleum products, chemical products, palm oil, as well as liquefied natural gas. As far as our imports are concerned, again, the electrical electronic products will be a major import product, followed by chemicals, petroleum, machinery equipment, as well as manufacturers of metal. Next. Now, as I have enumerated this a while ago, the manufactured goods continue to dominate both in terms of our exports as well as imports. Now, particularly, we can see that there is an increase in terms of contribution from our rubber products, particularly the rubber gloves. We can also see an increase in terms of our electrical electronic components. This is perhaps due to the high demand from the medical sectors all over the world. Next. Now, notwithstanding that, as far as Malaysia is concerned, while of course our trading partners for the past few years have remained more or less the same in terms of our top trading partners, we have also undertaken an approach to diversify our export markets, as you can see on the screen, where we're also focusing on countries in the Middle East. Apart from that as well, we're also focusing at the Americas, particularly the Southern American part. Now, I would now like to go on to share with you in terms of our trade performance with France. Next. Well, as far as France is concerned, of course, as we know, France is part of the EU. And the EU basically is also as a region, is also one of the major trading partners for Malaysia, accounting for approximately about 7.7% of Malaysia's total trade. And as far as France is concerned, it's considered as one of the top 5 trading partners within the EU. Not only that, it's also a major source of foreign direct investment into Malaysia. Next. Now, as far as the trade between Malaysia and France, we can see that from 2019 until 2020, there has been a decline, but this is mainly due to the global economic developments pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic, where most countries around the world have imposed lockdown measures, and these of course have disrupted supply chains as well as the global market demand for goods. That's why you can see that there is a marginal decline as far as Malaysia's trade with France is concerned. Next. Now, as far as what are those products that constitute the major imported products into Malaysia, we can see that the majority of it basically consists of transport equipment, namely the automotive parts and components. There was also the chemical and chemical products also plays a significant role in terms of contributing to the imports into Malaysia. And apart from that, we can see that other major imported products would be machinery and equipment, electrical electronics, as well as beverages and tobacco. Now, as far as exports are concerned, the products are more or less the same, perhaps, of course, with the addition of rubber products from Malaysia, as well as processed food. Now, for information, Malaysia is a major producer for rubber gloves, rubber medical gloves, whereby Malaysia actually accounts for nearly 60% of the world's supply of rubber gloves. Next. I would now like to talk about investment performance for the past 11 months. in Malaysia.
Nice.
Can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. Yeah. Yes, so as far as the investments into Malaysia is concerned, the domestic direct investments continue to account the majority of our investments, where the share is approximately about 61% compared to the foreign investments, which is about 38.8%. And out of this, the manufacturing sector account for nearly 60% of the share of total approved investments into Malaysia for the first 11 months of last year. The services sector follows at second, accounting for nearly 39%. And of course, the rest would have come from the primary sector. Next. Now, as far as investments by the various economic sectors are concerned, and in relation to which is our major source of foreign direct investments, I can see, of course, China remains our largest investor in terms of approved investments. And as far as France is concerned, from the EU, is also considered one of the largest investor as far as the foreign direct investment is concerned. Next, please. In terms of projects, as of the first 11 months of last year, we saw 11 projects from French investors being approved by our investment promotion agency. Next. Now, the investments from France into Malaysia have been fairly consistent since 2018. But of course, going into 2020, again, I should say due to the global economic developments, we see a significant drop in terms of investments. But nevertheless, according to our investment promotion agency, MITI, there is a significant amount of investment leads coming from France this year, which we hope to follow through and to approve these investments, thereby helping to improve the investment performance, the bilateral investment performance between Malaysia as well as France. Now, I would like to now talk about the most recent free trade agreement that Malaysia has signed in November last year with 14 other countries. Now, this particular free trade agreement is called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or in short, RCEP, or some of us will call it RCEP. Now, the RCEP at the moment is considered the world's largest free trade agreement. Next, please. It is considered the world's largest free trade agreement because by population, in terms of population, it accounts for nearly 30% of the world's population. Now, in terms of the world's GDP, it similarly accounts for 1/3 of the world's GDP. And if you talk about global merchandise trade, it accounts for nearly 27% of the global merchandise trade. Now, as far as Malaysia is concerned, Malaysia's export to the RCEP participating countries account for 56.4% of our exports. Now, what would be the impact of the RCEP or RCEP to the Malaysian economy? Now, there was a paper produced by the Peterson Institute for International Economics in June last year. And according to that paper, it's estimated that with the RCEP coming into force for Malaysia, we can see a nominal increase of about 1.1% in terms of the nominal GDP for Malaysia for the next 10 years. And based on preliminary assessment by our Trade or External Promotion Agency, MATRADE, total exports to the RCEP participating countries could increase by nearly 21 billion ringgit per year. Next. Now, as far as impact on job opportunities, we will see as well a significant development pertaining to that once we sign on, or once the RCEP basically comes into effect. As far as foreign direct investment, it's estimated that the RCEP will bring an annual increase of about 0.5% of foreign direct investments from the RCEP participating countries into Malaysia for the next 10 years. Next. Now, as far as what the RCEP can provide, particularly for businesses or companies that are operating in Malaysia as well as the other RCEP participating countries, is, of course, number one, offering market access to 1/3 of the world's population. And of course, the second benefit would be it allows intra-regional sourcing of raw materials, number one, at competitive prices, as well as it allows these products to be counted towards a product deemed as originating within the RCEP region. Now, this is very important because most often when people talk about the any free trade agreement, in terms of trade in goods, what comes to mind is that we can enjoy preferential import duties when we export to the trading partner. But this benefit, or the concessionary preferential import duties, could only be enjoyed if the product is deemed to be originating within the FTA region. So imagine, by having an FTA that constitutes 15 countries, that could mean, or this possibly means, that when a product is exported from Malaysia to any of the 14 countries, by using materials, raw materials, parts and components from any of these 15 countries, including Malaysia, these could count as originating within the FTA territory, thereby allowing companies greater access to raw materials, parts and components. But at the same time, the particular product which is exported to the RCEP partner countries could also enjoy preferential duties. Now, this could, of course, enhance the integration of the supply chain of Malaysian companies or companies based in Malaysia with the other 14 other countries. Now, at the same time, the RCEP also promotes greater transparency in terms of laws, regulations, and policies. It also facilitates information sharing. In terms of trade facilitation, you can see there is greater harmonization and cooperation among the customs authorities of the 15 countries. It also allows economic and capacity building programs to be initiated. And of course, it also introduces rules on new sectors such as e-commerce. And of course, finally, in terms of protection of intellectual property rights, it also provides consistent, clear, and uniform rules for all the 15 countries, which of course includes China. Next. Now, of course, as in any free trade agreement, there are certain elements that are excluded. Now, as far as the RCEP is concerned, when we talk about government procurement, we do not talk about the market access for government procurement, but instead, the RCEP aims to promote greater information sharing and transparency in terms of government procurement procedures in the 15 RCEP countries. The provision by any government in terms of grants, subsidies, and incentives are also excluded from the RCEP. And of course, the other element which is excluded is also in relation to the provision of export duties. Next. Of course, Malaysia, with the rest of the 14 other countries, have signed the RCEP in November last year. But having signed the RCEP, or the Free Trade Agreement, there is the process of ratification that will need to be completed before the RCEP enters into force as far as Malaysia is concerned. Now, in the RCEP is provided that if there are 6 ASEAN member states, and 4 of the ASEAN FTA partners, once they ratify the RCEP, then the RCEP will come into force. And of course for Malaysia, the RCEP will come into force 60 days after we have completed our domestic ratification procedures. Next. Now, I would now like to talk about the Industry 4.0, or what we call as Industry Forward in Malaysia. In Malaysia, there is a national overarching policy, which is called the Industry Forward, that basically promotes the adoption of Industry 4.0 technologies in the manufacturing sector, with particular emphasis on the small and medium enterprises. Now, this policy of Industry Forward rests on 5 pillars, which is aptly summed as first, FIRST. So the acronym for it is FIRST. What it stands for is, number 1, the policy provides for proper financing to be provided to promote or to encourage the adoption of Industry 4.0 technologies. Number 2, the policy also provides for the development of the appropriate infrastructure to support the adoption of Industry 4.0 technologies. Now, by that, what we mean is basically in terms of enhancing the telecommunications infrastructure. For your information, the government of Malaysia has allocated a certain amount of allocation to enhance and to upgrade the telecommunications infrastructure in most of our industrial parks around the country. Thirdly, it also provides for a consistent and comprehensive regulatory framework in terms of encouraging our industries to adopt Industry 4.0 technologies. Now, we also acknowledge that to enable the fourth industrial revolution, there is a need to have the appropriate talent to support it. Therefore, under this policy, there are also plans of action or initiatives that are formulated and designed to develop a talent pool, a consistent talent pool to support our industries that have moved up the value chain, as well as adopting the Industry 4.0 technologies. And of course, lastly, when we talk about technologies, there's also a need to come out with the right standards in terms of what sort of technologies that will be appropriate for our industries. Now, as far as encouraging our industries to adopt Industry 4.0, there are 2 particular initiatives that I would like to speak on. These initiatives consist of the Industry 4.0 Readiness Assessment Program or initiatives, and the other one will be the Industry 4.0 Intervention Fund. Now, as far as the Industry Forward Readiness Assessment is concerned, it's a program dedicated to companies, particularly the small and medium enterprises, to assess their readiness in adopting Industry 4.0 technologies. And the assessment is carried out with funding by the government. Now, as far as how many companies have actually undertaken this particular initiative, in 2019, 508 companies 508 companies have actually participated in this initiative. And last year, despite the challenge of the lockdown as well as the pandemic is concerned, 382 companies have actually participated in terms of the readiness assessment initiative. Now, for companies that are assessed as being ready to adopt Industry 4.0 technologies, they can also apply, they can subsequently apply for a matching grant from the Malaysian government. Now, this matching grant is up to a maximum of 500,000 ringgit and is in the form of a 70-30 ratio. That means 70% of the cost of adoption of Industry 4.0 technologies will be provided by the government of Malaysia, with the balance of 30% to be provided by the company. So that means as far as these 500,000 ringgit is concerned, this will constitute up to a maximum of 70% of that ratio. And in addition to that, the government has also agreed out of that 70% to advance 30% to the company. So that means once a company is approved, it automatically gets this 30% upfront. Whereas, of course, the balance of the 40% will be based on the disbursement stages. Now, as far as what sectors that have at the moment benefited from this intervention fund or the matching grant, there are three main sectors, namely from the plastic product sector, food, as well as manufacturing and engineering support. Now, I would now like to talk about what the government is focusing on this year, and this can be seen from the announcement of the budget 2021. Now, as far as the budget of 2021 is concerned, there are three strategic pillars. Number one is the care for the people's well-being. And number two is to ensure the continuity of business. And number three, to ensure the economic resilience of our nation. Now, as far as the Ministry of International Trade and Industry is concerned, there are several areas of focus that we'll be looking at this year. Number one, we'll be looking at encouraging investments, both domestic direct investments as well as foreign direct investments in key areas. And number two is in terms of expansion of our international market access. And number three is, of course, improvement to the business regulatory environment. And number four is to promote talent development as well as encouraging digitalization of the economic sector. And finally, plans will be put in place to ensure that Malaysia will be self-sufficient in certain economic sectors, and at the same time ensuring the resiliency of our domestic supply chain. Now, allow me to now go into detail in each of these areas. Now, as far as Malaysia's investment focus is concerned, we will be encouraging investments into several areas, namely sectors that are high value added, knowledge intensive, having strong linkages with our domestic supply chain, high technology and capital intensive, and of course, certain strategic sectors as well. And this can be observed by several incentives that have been announced in our budget, as you can see next, in the next slide. Firstly, the government has allocated 1 billion ringgit of what we call as a special incentive package to support research and development in sectors such as aerospace and electrical and electronic clusters. Now, as far as promoting global trading centers to be established in Malaysia, the concessionary 10% tax rate on the statutory income for 5 years are introduced, and these are renewable for another 5 years. Now, as far as MRO activities in the aerospace sector is concerned, the current incentives are extended until 31st of December 2022. And of course, for those who are holding key positions in companies of strategic investments, they will enjoy a special tax rate of 15%. Now, the focus areas for investments that will be carried out mainly by MIDA, Invest KL, as well as the other investment promotion agencies are concerned, would be in those sectors that are high technology, high capital, as well as that provides high value added. And at the same time, these sectors also possess a certain degree of economic complexity. Now, as far as France is concerned, based on our intelligence, there is a foreign investment lead amounting to about 4.5 billion ringgit that we are following through, and hopefully these investments can be realized that can contribute to the greater Malaysia-France investment performance. Now, apart from that, there is this particular unit that has been established since last year, which is called the Project Acceleration and Coordination Unit. Now, this particular unit, main objective is actually to facilitate investments, particularly between the federal and the state government. Now, as we know, in Malaysia, there are laws or regulations that fall within the purview of either the federal government or the state government. Henceforth, this particular unit, which is set up in MIDA, aims to help to reduce unnecessary burdens by facilitating foreign investments, as well as our own domestic investments in securing the necessary regulatory approvals, and at the same time addressing any operational matters that they may face. Next. Now, as far as expansion of Malaysia's international market access, for this year, the government of Malaysia has allocated 35 million ringgit to the Ministry of International Trade and Industry for us to carry out trade and investment mission. In fact, we have already identified a few countries to carry out the trade and investment mission this year. We hope that once the situation improves as far as the reduction of the COVID-19 cases are concerned, our minister, who is a senior minister for economic affairs, will be leading this trade and investment mission abroad. Now, apart from that, just as we have signed the RCEP last year, we are hoping that we can complete our domestic ratification process this year. And therefore, by doing that, the RCEP can come into force. And of course, for our Malaysian businesses or companies that are based in Malaysia, they can quickly leverage on that particular FTA. Now, I also like to inform that at the moment, between ASEAN and China, there's really an existing ASEAN-China FTA, and we are looking into improving the market access into China as far as ASEAN-China FTA is concerned. Now, apart from that, we're also looking into how can we reduce non-tariff measures or non-tariff barriers between both regions, both ASEAN as well as China. And also we'll be looking into capacity building programs to be initiated by both sides. Now, as far as the CPTPP is concerned, the government will also be carrying out an assessment, a renewed assessment on the cost and benefit of ratifying the CPTPP this year. Now, when we talk about improvement to the business regulatory environment, now way back in 2013, the Malaysian government, through our agency, the Malaysia Productivity Corporation, has introduced a guidelines on development and implementation of regulations, which of course constitute what we call as good regulatory practice. Now, this will be continued. In fact, it will be enhanced by a particular initiative which is called My Muda. Now, My Muda is an initiative implemented by the Malaysia Productivity Corporation, with a view or objective to encourage our ministries and agencies to review, amend, and abolish any outdated or non-business friendly laws and regulations. Now, this is a continuous process and is being done at the moment. And of course, as far as MITI is concerned, we are also looking forward to organizing the MITI annual dialogue for this year. Now, for those who are not familiar with the dialogue, it's basically a dialogue whereby it's facilitated by the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, and where we invite industry associations as well as chambers of commerce, including CCI France, to submit what we call as memorandum of issues that are faced by your members. And once we receive these issues, we will then convey these issues to the relevant ministries and agencies, with the hope of these ministries and agencies providing their responses. And for issues that are yet to be resolved after that, now what's going to happen would be we will invite those relevant ministries and agencies to meet up with the industry associations and the chambers at this annual dialogue, with the hope of resolving the issues during the dialogue. Now, another area of focus would be in terms of talent development as well as digitization. As I've just mentioned, two of the most important initiatives to encourage industries, particularly the SMEs, to adopt Industry 4.0 technologies will be the Industry Forward Readiness Assessment as well as the Industry Forward Intervention Fund. We will continue to implement these two initiatives, and hopefully, as things recover, we will be able to outreach to a greater number of companies around the nation. Now, there is also a National Employment Council that has been established, where this National Employment Council is chaired by our Honorable Prime Minister. Several task forces have been established under the council, one of which is the TVET task force. The TVET task force aims to streamline the TVET courses that are implemented by various ministries and agencies in order to meet industry requirements. Now, so what we are currently doing as far as this task force is concerned is to look at the various TVET courses that are being implemented, and then to match this against the industry requirement to see whether there are any gaps between what the courses offered and what the industry required, with the hope that we can come up with measures to actually bridge the gap. Now, apart from the National Employment Council, there is another council which is also equally important, which is called the National Digital Economy and 4IR Council. Now, this council aims to promote the strategic direction as well as to approve policies in relation to promotion of the digital economy as well as the fourth industrial revolution. Two blueprints are expected to be launched very soon in relation to the digital economy as well as the fourth industrial revolution. Finally, as far as the Ministry of International Trade is concerned, we are also looking into helping our nation to achieve self-sufficiency in several sectors and the resilience, and as well as to ensure the resilience of a domestic supply chain. Now, this is based on our experience last year when we initiated the movement control order or the lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what we realized is when we look across some of the industrial sectors along the value chain, we feel that Malaysia does not have a significant presence in some parts of this value chain. Therefore, learning from that experience, we are formulating measures as we speak on how do we encourage investments into certain parts of this value chain with a view to building self-sufficiency as far as these industrial sectors are concerned. Therefore, as far as MITI is concerned, we'll be identifying new sources of economic growth. And as we speak also, as for those who are based in Malaysia, we are currently faced with the movement control order. And in this particular instance, MITI is working hand in hand with the National Security Council to develop a pandemic industry response plan. Now, this pandemic industry response plan is to ensure that our industries are ready to respond in the future should a pandemic occurs again, so that we can minimize the impact in terms of business continuity and particularly in terms of disruption to the supply chain. And lastly, of course, in the process, we will be creating blueprints to ensure that our domestic supply chain remained resilient. With that, I conclude my presentation today, and I will welcome if anyone would like to ask or seek clarification on what I've just presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Datuk Sri, for that very comprehensive presentation, and you covered a lot of very good updates and interesting areas, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions. So without further ado, because we have about 13 minutes to go, we'll get straight into the Q&A, and I have the pleasure of moderating it together with my colleague, Mr. Gilles Waeldin, CCIFM President. So Gilles, would you like to kick off with the first question, please?
Thank you, Zainal. Dato Sri, thank you. We received, of course, quite a number of questions from the now 60 plus members who are online. Some of it probably you already partially answered. However, we will try to go through some maximum of them to make full use of this 15 minutes. We have members in Malaysia, in the region, but even we are also greeting members from France today. So the first question is actually not a question, but more a suggestion. As a state IPA, we would like to request for a series of virtual investment mission where every state has a chance to present their strength to potential global investors. This campaign could be led by MITI Global Office via virtual platform. Virtual investment mission, including webinar for global investor and roundtable meeting with business association, G2G, roundtable meetings, etc. Any comment on such a suggestion, Dato Sri?
Thank you, Gilles. Yes, I think because of the current developments where it is difficult or challenging to organize a physical trade and investment mission, even to hold physical meetings for that matter. Therefore, I think as far as MITI is concerned, and particularly our investment promotion agency, MIDA, they have actually embarked on a series of virtual webinars, basically, in terms of promoting Malaysia. In fact, to quote an example, in December last year, MIDA has collaborated with the Malaysian Airport Holdings Berhad and Business France to promote the Subang Aerotech or KLIA, as well as the KLIA Aeropolis, as a potential business and investment opportunity for French companies. And of course, MIDA has also arranging for several webinars to be organized with relevant chambers and commerce in order to promote Malaysia. Now, as far as the other investment promotion agencies are concerned, MIDA is also coordinating with them so that in these webinars, each of these individual, especially the state investment promotion agency, can actually promote their states. To digress a bit, we are actually coordinating with the various investment promotion agencies so that our efforts in promoting each and every state within Malaysia, it's more coordinated. So we are leveraging on what each state can offer based on their strength, so that complementing each other's rather than trying to compete with each other. I was also made to understand that MIDA is currently in the midst of discussion with the European Chambers of Commerce to organize a virtual seminar. And this is a platform where we'll be inviting the various state investment promotion agencies to showcase their strength and the uniqueness of each state via virtual booths, actually, during this particular webinar. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. And I think we also noted all this project acceleration and coordination unit, which is definitely welcome in this concept as well. Yeah, thank you. Zainal?
Dato' Sri, yes, thank you. Dato' Sri, I'd like to, there are a lot of questions here. I'd like to jump into the free trade question, if I may. I jump a little bit. You mentioned about RCEP. Two questions into one, if I may. First of all, in your presentation, you mentioned about RCEP and the benefits to local companies, obviously. What about how can foreign companies, and I mentioned just now in our group of members, we have got a lot of entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs, of course, will partner with local companies. So how can foreign companies also leverage off RCEP? And maybe after that, a comment about other trade agreements that you see in the horizon as well, in particular the EU FTA. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the easiest way, of course, is for any French investor to set up their operations in Malaysia, either on their own or perhaps through a joint venture with a Malaysian company. Now, if we were to talk about manufactured goods, for example, now in order for them to enjoy preferential duties, say from Malaysia export to any of the other 14 countries, that particular product from Malaysia will have to qualify as what we call as originating. That means it's considered as being manufactured in Malaysia. And of course, we know that under current circumstances, especially due to global trade developments, it's kind of impossible to say that a particular product will be 100% produced or in a particular country using the product, using parts and components or raw materials sourced within that country alone. But in this case, imagine this. If, say, for example, if you compare, say, RCEP with a regional FTA, say ASEAN with China, now that basically means if you are a company in Malaysia, you will need to source your parts and components only within the ASEAN region and China to allow your product, which is exported from Malaysia to China, to qualify for preferential import duty. So if you talk about ASEAN and China, that means only 11 countries. But with RCEP, for example, you can also source your parts and components or raw materials, say, from either Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Korea. And these raw materials or parts and components will also be counted as originating. So therefore, in your product, you can enjoy a greater diversification in terms of the parts and components and raw materials. Perhaps this will also help to improve your costing for your product. So this is, of course, to me, the main benefit of perhaps French companies that wish to invest in Malaysia, that they can leverage on the RCEP.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dato' Sri. To extend to Zainal's question, I need to ask, can you please give us your opinion on the potential to reignite the talks on the EU-Malaysian Free Trade Agreement?
Thank you, Gilles. Actually, this particular topic, when it comes to Malaysia-EU FTA, has always been one of the most popular topics. Whenever myself or my colleagues attend any functions organized by European Chambers of Commerce and, of course, CCIFM as well. As you know, at the moment, we have just signed the RCEP, and we are in the process of ratifying the RCEP. Now, the other FTA, of course, is CPTPP, which we are actually conducting a new assessment on the cost and benefit. Now, as far as the Malaysia-EU FTA, I know that we have had significant discussion about it. And until the change of government in 2018. Now, of course, as we see, as far as the policy considerations would have been different then, and this will have to be taken into consideration as far as our Malaysia's position with regards to pursuing negotiations with the EU on the Malaysia-EU FTA. But by and large, Malaysia as an open trading nation, we have been very open when it comes to any free trade agreement. In fact, as far as Malaysia is concerned, we are looking positively at the EU's approach to ASEAN to actually conclude an ASEAN EU FTA. At the same time, we're also learning from the FTAs that have been signed by EU with both Singapore as well as Vietnam in terms of making the necessary assessment on the benefits or on the cost as well in having an FTA with the EU. Having said that, of course, notwithstanding in the absence of a regional, or in a bilateral FTA between Malaysia and EU, I think as far as the trade performance is concerned, including investment performance between Malaysia and EU, has always been positive. Yeah, and of course, I would also like to encourage members of EU, particularly France, to now not only look at the possibility of having a Malaysia-EU FTA, but I think to quickly leverage on the RCEP. Because I was made to understand that there are several countries from Southern America, as well as from the Asia Pacific, that have actually indicated their interest to join the RCEP. Thank you.
Right. Quick question, and then we'll see whether there's time for one more. So a lot of questions here on Industry 4.0, and you reference to the Industry Forward framework. So does Malaysia's Industry Forward blueprint align with the Malaysian Aerospace Industry Blueprint 2030? There are 7 strategies, 41 initiatives that were developed in the blueprint. Is it still relevant, taking into account today's economy?
Thank you, Dato. Zainal. Well, I would say that the Industry Forward policy actually is a very broad policy framework. It can cater to any manufacturing subsector for that matter, which is why, as I have illustrated in my presentation, there are 2 particular initiatives, which is the readiness assessment as well as the intervention fund, of which both are actually open to the various manufacturing subsector, including the aerospace subsector. And of course, as far as the aerospace subsector is concerned, the MRO, which constitute about only 46% of the total contribution in terms of revenue to the aerospace sector, also features very prominently. And the fact that in the current budget, or in this year's budget, that the incentives for the MRO sector has been extended till 31st December 2022 is a testament of the government's priority in terms of the aerospace sector. And if I may also extend that to, if you look at the current movement control order in place in the 7 states and soon to be the whole country, with the exception of the state of Sarawak, one of the economic subsectors that are still allowed to operate is actually the aerospace sector. That includes, of course, the MRO. Therefore, I can assure you that in any policy, notwithstanding, not only in terms of the Industry Forward, but if even, for example, in the new Industrial Master Plan that currently MITI is working on, we will also take into consideration the importance of encouraging investments into the aerospace sector, particularly the MRO subsector.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato.
Gilles, we have...
Yes, I think we're running out of time, so I think I need to close if you all agree with that. So, Yang Ybhg, Dato Sri Norazman Ayob, Mohamed Azmi, Zainal. Well, the context is unique and we are all looking forward to turn this page of this too long-lasting story. With every crisis, there is pain, but also strength. As a winner will be resilient, economies and companies are able to adapt to the changes. MITI is showing directions. The government is reaching deep in its pockets to support the situation, but we have all our role to play to win this battle all together, hopefully. To the question, the reinsurance of viability of Malaysia as an investment hub in Asia Pacific, we have to see, based on the report we just received from Dato Sri, that I think Malaysia has been very resilient. The trade performance share has been steady and is also showing that the investment are still there. Of course, with 60% the world supply of rubber gloves, the manufacturing industry in this sector has highly benefited from the situation, while others were probably more suffering. But overall, I would say with the figures we have seen, everything seems still very strong. And usually economies like in Southeast Asia with a high GDP before the crisis are usually bouncing back. And we see with the GDP forecast we have for the year to come, we should also be looking forward for this rebound. We understand from the sharing that the trade partners have been the same, but there is a focus to develop new trade partners as well. We know that the FDIs have not been as consistent as they have been in the past for France, but we are also looking forward, of course, to get that back on track as soon as possible, and it will happen. As Dato mentioned, we have a few very interesting projects in the pipe. Regarding the LCEP, world largest free trade agreement, I guess it's a big step forward, and it will overall be beneficiary to Malaysia in terms of economy, in terms of employment. And we are looking for the ratification of this in the coming year, I guess. For Industry Forward, the initiative has been launched. Some companies have, quite a number of companies have gone through the readiness, I would say. Yeah? I think 500 was almost above the initial plan for 2019. So I think the response was good, and more companies need to understand that they can reach out to this readiness assessment and to, of course, the intervention fund, which I think 82 is maybe a bit too small at the moment, and maybe companies are not yet really realizing the great opportunities they have to strengthen up their capacity by using this fund. Because with up to 500,000, this is a fantastic opportunity to really venture into Industry Forward, Industry 4.0. The budget 2021 focus on continuing to pushing into attracting and developing further strategic investment with market expansion, with better regulatory practice, economical resilience, and not least the talent developments. And I conclude that there is still hope that we move forward on the EU-Asian or EU-Malaysian FTA, even though we get your message on the leverage of the companies to invest in Malaysia and to look at the RCEP as a short-term focus. Thank you on behalf of our members for this sharing session. We are, of course, looking forward to meet again in future in a non-virtual way, hopefully. Thank you, MITI. Thank you to our partner, InvestKL, for this event. Thank you to our member for tuning in this afternoon. Please, all of you, take care and see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Azmi. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.